My fiancé threatened, "Stay away from my family, or I'll expose you." I replied, "Not a word." Then I sent her parents proof she forged their names on a second mortgage for their home. Her father was left frantically calling me about the foreclosure notice. I, 32M, discovered who my fiancé really was 3 weeks before our wedding, and what I found made my blood run cold. We'd been together for 4 years. Met at a mutual friend's barbecue, hit it off immediately, moved in together after 18 months. She was charming, attentive, came from what seemed like a loving family. Her parents adored her. Everyone did. That should have been my first warning. The cracks started showing 6 months ago when I noticed money disappearing from our joint account. Small amounts at first. 200 here, 300 there. I brought it up casually, and she had reasonable explanations every time. Her car needed repairs. Her mother's birthday gift. Emergency dental work. I trusted her completely, so I let it go. Then my credit card was declined at a business dinner. Embarrassing doesn't begin to cover it. I checked my accounts that night and found $15,000 missing. When I confronted her, she broke down crying, admitted she'd been helping her brother with gambling debts, promised it would never happen again. She seemed genuinely remorseful. I was furious, but decided we'd work through it. I made her close our joint account and set up a payment plan to pay me back. 2 weeks later, my business partner called with concerns about our company finances. Someone had been accessing our accounts. The IP address traced back to our home. My stomach dropped. I went through our home office while she was at work. Found her laptop tucked behind some boxes. She'd left it unlocked, probably in a hurry. What I discovered made me physically ill. She'd been systematically stealing from me for over 2 years. But that wasn't the worst part. There were bank statements, legal documents, loan applications, all bearing her parents' signatures. Dozens of them. I recognized her father's signature from the engagement party invitations. These looked similar, but not quite right. She'd taken out a second mortgage on her parents' house. $170,000. Forged both their signatures. The documents were sophisticated enough to pass initial scrutiny, but sloppy enough that anyone looking closely would spot the fraud. I felt sick. Her parents were good people. Retired school teachers who'd scrimped and saved their whole lives. That house was their retirement security, probably their only real asset. They had no idea their daughter had put them half a year away from foreclosure. I photographed everything, backed up files to 3 different cloud services. Then I sat in our apartment and waited for her to come home, my mind racing through every moment of our relationship, wondering how much of it had been real. She walked in around 6, chatting on her phone, laughing about something. She stopped when she saw my face. I asked her to sit down, told her I knew everything, showed her the evidence, watched her cycle through denial, anger, tears, and finally cold calculation. That last one was chilling. Her whole face changed. The mask slipped completely. She told me I didn't understand. Said she'd made some bad investments, got in over her head with some people I didn't want to know about. Insisted she'd been planning to fix everything before anyone found out. Her parents would never need to know if I just helped her sort it out. We could still get married, move forward, pretend none of this happened. I told her we were done. Said I was calling off the wedding and she needed to move out immediately. That's when she got nasty. Really nasty. She leaned forward with this smile that made my skin crawl and laid out her counteroffer. If I left quietly, didn't tell anyone why we'd broken up, and especially stayed away from her family, she'd leave me alone. But if I tried to expose her or warn her parents, she'd destroy me. She had access to my company accounts, knew passwords, had copies of documents. She'd already thought this through. Said she could make it look like I'd been embezzling, create a trail that would lead investigators straight to me. By the time I proved my innocence, my reputation and business would be ruined. She'd make sure everyone knew I was the thief. Her family would believe her over me. Everyone would. I sat there staring at this woman I'd planned to marry, truly seeing her for the first time. She wasn't panicking. She was threatening me. She'd already prepared for the possibility of getting caught, had an exit strategy that involved throwing me under the bus. I told her I needed time to think about it. She seemed satisfied with that, probably assumed fear would keep me in line. She went to stay at her sister's place that night. Said she'd give me space to process everything, but expected an answer within 48 hours. The moment she left, I called a lawyer who specialized in financial fraud. Expensive, but worth every penny. He reviewed everything I'd found, confirmed it was as bad as I thought, maybe worse. The second mortgage alone could send her to prison for years. The theft from me, the business account access, all of it painted a picture of someone who'd been running scams long before we met. My lawyer had interesting advice. He told me about statute of limitations, evidence preservation, and the importance of protecting myself first. He also casually mentioned that if a crime was being committed against innocent third parties, I might have a moral obligation to act, regardless of personal consequences. He couldn't tell me what to do, but he made sure I understood the full scope of what was happening. Her parents were going to lose their house. The mortgage she'd taken out had a balloon payment due in 3 months. There was no way she could pay it. Foreclosure proceedings would start within weeks of that missed payment. They'd be homeless in their 70s, their credit destroyed, everything they'd built together gone. I spent that night thinking about her threat. She could absolutely make my life hell. Might even succeed in framing me if she was smart about it. My lawyer had already taken steps to protect me and the business, but mud sticks. Even unfounded accusations would damage me professionally and personally. But letting her parents walk blindly into financial ruin felt unconscionable. They were innocent. They'd welcomed me into their family, treated me like a son. Her father had been so proud and excited about our wedding. Kept joking about finally having a son to watch football with. Her mother had been planning the reception for months, calling me with updates about flowers and seating charts. The decision wasn't actually that hard in the end. I compiled everything into a clear, organized folder. Bank statements showing the forged signatures, loan documents, payment schedules, the foreclosure timeline, proof that she'd done this, not them, including digital fingerprints and access logs from her laptop, made it impossible to misunderstand. I packaged it all up with a cover letter explaining what I'd found, how I'd found it, and what it meant for their home. Kept my tone neutral, factual, just the information they needed to protect themselves. Then I sent copies to both her parents via certified mail and email. Also sent copies to my lawyer for safekeeping. And I included one more thing, screenshots of her threatening me, recorded on my phone during our last conversation. I'd thought to document it, turned on the voice recorder app before she came home that day. Got everything. Her confession, her threats, her complete lack of remorse. I sent the package on a Wednesday morning. Then I replied to her last message. Told her I'd made my decision. Kept it simple, not a word. Just those 3 words. Then I blocked her number and waited. The fallout started within hours. Her mother called me first, crying so hard I could barely understand her. She kept apologizing, saying she had no idea, asking if this was really happening. I told her everything I knew, walked her through the documents, confirmed their signatures were forged. She was devastated. I could hear her father in the background, his voice rising in disbelief. They confronted her that evening. I wasn't there but heard about it later from her younger brother, who reached out after everything exploded. Apparently she tried to deny it at first, then broke down and admitted everything, blamed gambling debts and bad people, same story she'd given me. Her father didn't buy it. He'd taught business law for 30 years before retiring. Recognized fraud when he saw it. They called the police immediately. Filed a report. Moved to protect their house and their finances. Her father also called a lawyer who specialized in elder fraud, started proceedings to prove they hadn't authorized the mortgage. And then her father started calling me. The first call came around 11 that night. He sounded destroyed. Thanked me for warning them. Said they'd received a foreclosure notice that afternoon. Had no idea any of this was happening until they got my package. Without it, they would have been blindsided when the bank came for their house. They'd had no time to prepare, no chance to fight back. Now they at least had options. He called again the next morning. Said his lawyer needed the original files I'd found. Asked if I'd testify if it came to that. I told him yes, to everything. Sent over everything my lawyer cleared me to share. The calls kept coming. Sometimes just to update me, sometimes to ask questions, sometimes because he seemed to need someone to talk to who understood what his daughter had done. His pain was unbearable to witness. He kept saying he didn't know where they'd gone wrong, what they'd missed, how their daughter had turned into someone capable of this. She tried to contact me too. When her blocked calls didn't work, she created new numbers, email addresses, even tried showing up at my office. Security handled that. She apparently cycled through rage, bargaining, and playing victim. Sent messages claiming I'd ruined her life, destroyed her family, that everything was my fault. Other times she tried guilt, reminded me of good times we'd shared, Suggested we could still fix this together. I never responded. Not once. Her threat of exposing me never materialized. Turns out when you're arrested for fraud, identity theft, and forgery, you lose credibility fast. She'd been bluffing anyway. My lawyer confirmed she'd had access to company accounts, but hadn't actually done anything with it. No false trail, no planted evidence. Just empty threats from someone used to people backing down. The investigation moved quickly once authorities got involved. She'd left a digital footprint wide enough to spot from space. Every login, every document access, every transaction tracked and time-stamped. She'd gotten sloppy, overconfident, thought she was smarter than everyone else. She was charged with multiple felonies: elder fraud, identity theft, forgery, grand theft. Her parents pressed full charges. They were angry in a way I'd never seen before. Her mother barely spoke during this period, just signed whatever documents were needed with a grim determination. Her father threw himself into the legal battle, helping his lawyer build an airtight case. The mortgage company initially resisted their claims. Banks don't like admitting they approved loans based on forged documents. But her father's lawyer was relentless. Threatened lawsuits, regulatory complaints, media exposure. Eventually, they agreed to void the mortgage and investigate their own approval process. Her parents kept their house. Meanwhile, she took a plea deal. Her lawyer convinced her that going to trial would result in maximum sentencing. She pled guilty to reduced charges in exchange for cooperation and restitution. Got 5 years, suspended to 3 with good behavior, plus probation and full repayment of everything she'd stolen. Her family cut her off completely. Her brother told me they couldn't forgive what she'd done. Not just the crime, but the calculated nature of it. The way she'd targeted her own parents, people who'd loved and supported her unconditionally. How she'd been willing to let them lose everything to cover her own mistakes. Update 1. The trial concluded 2 months after I sent that package. She was sentenced, processed, and transferred to a minimum security facility about 90 miles from the city. Her parents didn't attend sentencing. Said they couldn't bear to see her, that the daughter they'd raised was already gone. I testified during proceedings, answered questions about what I'd found, how I'd found it, what she'd said when confronted. Her lawyer tried to paint me as a vindictive ex-fiancé with an axe to grind, but the evidence spoke for itself. Digital forensics experts confirmed everything. Timeline analysis showed she'd been planning this for at least 18 months, possibly longer. What emerged during discovery was worse than I'd imagined. Our relationship wasn't her first con. She'd done this before, smaller scale, with a previous boyfriend 5 years ago. He'd caught her stealing. She'd convinced him to stay quiet, then disappeared with $30,000. He'd never reported it, too embarrassed and afraid she'd follow through on similar threats. There were other victims too. Friends she'd borrowed money from with sob stories about family emergencies. A former employer where inventory kept disappearing. Small enough amounts that people wrote it off as bad luck or poor judgment, never connecting it to her. Her parents were devastated by each new revelation. Her father told me during one of our last conversations that they were seeing a therapist, trying to process how they'd missed the signs, if they'd enabled her somehow. He kept asking if there was something they could have done differently. I didn't have answers. My business survived relatively intact. We'd caught the breach early enough that no major damage occurred. Changed all passwords, implemented new security protocols, moved to 2-factor authentication on everything. My partner was understanding once he learned the full story. Grateful I'd handled it quickly and transparently. Personally, recovery took longer. I didn't trust easily after that. Went to therapy myself, worked through the betrayal, the violated trust, the fact that I'd shared my life with someone I never really knew. My therapist helped me understand that I'd been targeted by someone skilled at manipulation, that missing the signs didn't make me stupid or naive. Dating seemed impossible for a while. Hard to open up when you're constantly wondering if you're being played. But eventually I started testing the waters again, taking things slow, paying attention to red flags I'd ignored before. Her parents and I stayed in touch for about a year after everything settled. They'd update me occasionally about their recovery, both financial and emotional. They'd refinanced their house properly this time, built their savings back up, were slowly rebuilding their lives. But talking to me seemed to remind them of what happened, what they'd lost. Eventually the calls became less frequent, then stopped altogether. I understood. Sometimes the only way to move forward is to leave the past completely behind. Update 2. She was released after serving 18 months. Model prisoner, early release for good behavior and completion of various rehabilitation programs. Her probation officer contacted me as part of her release conditions, asked if I wanted a restraining order. I declined, didn't think I needed one, and part of me wanted to believe she'd genuinely changed. That might have been naive, but I was tired of anger, tired of looking over my shoulder, wanted to believe people could learn from their mistakes. She didn't contact me directly. Heard through mutual friends that she was working at a call center, living in a small apartment on the other side of town, attending court-mandated therapy. Apparently, she was keeping her head down, following probation terms, staying away from everyone she'd hurt. Her family never reconciled with her. Her brother told me they couldn't. Too much damage, too much betrayal. They'd set up boundaries that didn't include her in their lives. She'd missed family weddings, the birth of her nephew, her father's 70th birthday. Those were consequences she had to live with. I ran into her once, about 6 months after her release. Pure chance, at a coffee shop near my office. She looked different. Older, tired, like the years had been harder than the time she'd served. We made eye contact. She looked like she might approach, then thought better of it. Just nodded slightly and left. Part of me wanted closure. Wanted to know if she'd actually changed or just gotten better at hiding. But I realized it didn't matter. Her evolution or lack thereof wasn't my concern anymore. I'd done what I needed to do, protected innocent people, and removed a threat from my life. Life moved on. I eventually met someone new. Took it incredibly slow, was probably more cautious than necessary, but she was patient, understanding, proved through consistency and time that not everyone was hiding something. We've been together 2 years now. She knows the whole story, asked to hear it early on, wanted to understand what I'd been through. Didn't judge me for missing the signs or for how I'd handled the aftermath. Her parents ended up selling their house last year. Not because they had to, but because they wanted a fresh start somewhere without painful memories. Moved to a smaller place near her brother and his family. I got a card when they moved, thanking me again for what I'd done. They included a photo of them with their grandson. They looked happy. That felt like enough. The business partner who'd first noticed the irregularities in our accounts became a good friend. We occasionally got drinks and talked about how bizarre that whole period was. He joked that I had the worst luck in relationships, but the best instincts when it counted. Said most people would have folded when threatened, let innocent people suffer to protect themselves. The fact that I hadn't said something about my character. I wasn't sure about that. Felt like I'd just done the baseline decent thing. But maybe that was the point. Sometimes doing the right thing isn't heroic. It's just recognizing you can't live with yourself if you don't act. Looking back now, 3 years removed from that nightmare, I'm grateful for one thing. I found out who she was before we got married, before we had kids, before our lives were even more entangled. Some people don't get that warning. They discover the truth years later, after they've built everything around someone who was never real. The wedding we'd planned never happened, obviously. Lost deposits, had to notify guests, dealt with the embarrassment of explaining a suddenly canceled wedding. But compared to what could have happened, those were minor inconveniences. I learned things about myself through that experience. Learned I could be pushed to my breaking point and still make calculated decisions instead of emotional ones. Learned that trust, once broken completely, never quite heals the same way. But also learned that moving forward was possible, that not everyone was waiting to betray me. That caution didn't have to become paranoia. Her father's final words to me, during our last real conversation before they moved, stayed with me. He said he was sorry I'd gotten caught up in their family's disaster, but grateful I'd cared enough to act even when it cost me. Said most people wouldn't have. Said he wished he'd raised a daughter with half my integrity. I didn't know what to say to that. Still don't. I just did what felt necessary at the time. Couldn't live with myself if I'd let those good people lose everything because I was afraid of retribution. Maybe that makes me principled. Maybe it just makes me someone who couldn't sleep at night otherwise. Either way, I survived. Came out the other side stronger, more aware, more careful about who I let into my life. The scars are there, subtle but permanent. But they're mine now, part of my story, proof that I faced something terrible and chose the harder right over the easier wrong. And her? She's living whatever life she's built from the rubble. I hope she's changed. Hope she learned something from losing everything. But that's not my concern anymore. My part in her story ended the day I sent that package. Everything after was just fallout and recovery. I'm good now. Really good. Building something real with someone honest. Working on trusting again. Taking it one day at a time. And if I ever find myself in a similar situation, if I ever have to choose between protecting myself and protecting innocent people, I know exactly what I'd do. The same thing. Every single time. If you'd like to see more stories like this, a gentle tap on the subscribe and hype button would mean the world to us. Please subscribe and press the hype button. Thanks in advance.